Hygias, the night is quiet. There is no sound of traffic, no distant hum of electricity, no glow of screens in dark rooms. The air is still, warm, and heavy with the faint scent of river water and earth. Somewhere far away, a soft wind moves across a wide, open land. It drifts slowly over fields of grain, over low mud brick homes, over the calm and steady flow of a river that has moved the same way for longer than memory can hold. This is ancient Egypt. Not the Egypt of grand monuments and towering stone structures, but a quieter place. A place where most people lived simple lives, shaped by routine, by the rhythm of the river, and by the slow passing of time. Life here does not rush. It does not change quickly. It moves in circles, not lines. Each day begins much like the one before it. And for many people, this sameness brings a kind of calm. A kind of quiet comfort. Before the sun rises, the land rests in a soft gray light. The Nile lies still, like a long ribbon of shadows stretching across the earth. Its waters are dark and smooth, barely disturbed except for the occasional ripple of a fish or the gentle dip of a bird searching for food. Along its banks, the soil is rich and black. This soil is everything. It is the reason people live here at all. Beyond it, the land quickly becomes dry and empty, fading into endless desert. But near the river, life gathers closely together, holding on to the narrow stretch of fertile ground. Villages are small. Homes are built from mud and straw, shaped by hand, dried under the sun. Their walls are thick, keeping out heat during the long days and holding warmth during the cooler nights. The rooftops are flat. Sometimes people sleep there, under the open sky, where the air moves more freely. Inside, there is little furniture. A few woven mats. Simple wooden stools. Clay jars for water and grain. Everything has its place, and nothing is wasted. As the first light of morning begins to spread across the horizon, the village slowly wakes. There are no alarms. No sudden noises. Just the gradual return of life. A man stirs from sleep. He sits up slowly, feeling the familiar weight of the day ahead. There is no surprise in what must be done. Today will be much like yesterday. And yesterday was much like the day before. He steps outside. The air is cool for a short while, and he takes a quiet breath before beginning his work. Nearby, others are waking too. A woman kneels beside a small grinding stone, preparing grain. She has done this many times before, her hands moving in a steady, practiced rhythm. Back and forth. Back and forth. The sound is soft, almost like a whisper against the morning silence. Children sleep a little longer. There is no rush for them yet. They will wake soon enough, stepping into the same patterns that their parents follow, learning slowly, day by day, what life expects of them. The sun rises gently. It does not burst into the sky. It lifts slowly, warming the land with quiet patience. Light spreads across the fields. Green stalks of barley and emmer wheat sway lightly in the breeze. These fields are carefully watched. Their growth depends on the Nile, on its yearly flooding that brings new soil and life. Everything depends on that cycle. The river rises. The river falls. And people adjust their lives to match it. This is the rhythm that shapes everything. Work begins early. Farmers walk to their fields with simple tools. Wooden plows. Stone blades. Ropes and baskets. They do not hurry. There is no need. The work is steady, predictable. They know exactly what must be done, and they do it the same way their parents did, and their parents before them. There is comfort in this repetition. No need to wonder. No need to change. The oxen move slowly across the soil, pulling plows through the earth. The ground opens in long, even lines. Birds follow behind, searching for insects disturbed by the turning soil. The sun climbs higher. The warmth grows stronger. Sweat forms, but it is expected. It is part of the day, just like the work itself. At the river's edge, another kind of work continues. Fishermen prepare their nets. They move quietly, their hands skilled from years of practice. The water is calm. They push their small boats out gently, careful not to disturb the balance. There is no urgency. The fish will come, as they always do. The river provides, as it always has. Back in the village, daily life unfolds in small, steady movements. Clay is shaped into pots. Cloth is woven thread by thread. Bread is baked in simple ovens, the smell rising slowly into the warm air. Nothing is rushed. Everything takes time. And time itself feels different here. It stretches. It lingers. It repeats. The same sounds fill the air each day. Grinding grain. Soft voices. The distant splash of water. The quiet steps of people moving through familiar paths. There are no sudden changes. No unexpected turns. Just the steady unfolding of a life that follows the same path, again and again. And in this repetition, there is a kind of peace. A life without constant uncertainty. A life where each day is known before it begins. Where the future looks very much like the past. Where the river will rise again. Where the fields will grow again. Where the work will continue, just as it always has. As the morning deepens, the sun settles into its place above the land. The sky is wide and clear. The world feels still, even as people move within it. And the day continues, gently, without interruption. The morning stretches quietly across the land. The sun has now arisen fully, resting high enough to warm the earth with a steady, even heat. Shadows grow shorter, pulling closer to the feet of those who move slowly through their work. There is no sudden shift in the pace of life. No moment when everything begins. It has already begun, softly, without notice. And it continues. In the fields, the farmers settle into their rhythm. Their movements are not hurried, but they are constant. Each step presses lightly into the soil. Each motion of the arm follows a pattern learned over many years. They bend. They lift. They turn. And then they do it again. The land does not demand speed. It asks only for patience. For attention. For care given in small, repeated actions. The soil near the Nile is dark and soft. It holds moisture longer than the dry earth beyond the river's reach. When pressed between the fingers, it feels cool, even as the sun grows stronger above. This soil is trusted. It has fed families for generations. It has behaved in the same way, season after season, rising with the flood and settling again as the waters return to their banks. There is comfort in knowing this. In believing that tomorrow will follow the same quiet pattern. A farmer pauses for a moment. Not out of exhaustion, but simply as part of the rhythm. He straightens his back and looks out across the fields. There is very little movement beyond what he already knows. Other figures bend and rise in the distance. Oxen continue their slow, steady path. Birds drift across the sky, their wings barely moving. Nothing feels urgent. Nothing feels uncertain. The world is as it should be. Closer to the village, the sounds of daily life continue in a soft and steady way. A woman sits just inside the doorway of her home, where a small patch of shade offers relief from the growing heat. In front of her, a flat stone rests on the ground. Grain is spread across it. Her hands move with quiet precision, guiding a smaller stone back and forth, crushing the grain into fine flour. The motion is simple. It repeats again and again. There is no need to think about it. Her body remembers. The sound it makes is gentle. A soft, rough whisper. Back and forth. Back and forth. Nearby, another woman prepares dough. She adds water slowly, mixing it with the ground grain until it forms a thick, heavy mass. Her fingers press into it, folding and turning, shaping it into something that will soon become bread. There is no recipe written down. No measurements. Only memory. Only habit. Only the quiet understanding passed from one generation to the next. Children begin to wake. Their movements are slower than the adults. They stretch. They rub their eyes. They step out into the light with a kind of quiet curiosity. But even for them, the day is not new. It follows a pattern they already know. They watch. They listen. They begin to learn. A small boy follows his father to the edge of the fields. He does not yet carry tools. He does not yet take part in the work in a full way. But he observes. He sees how the plow is held. How the soil turns. How the oxen are guided with soft words and gentle pressure. There is no formal lesson. No moment of instruction. Learning happens slowly. Through repetition. Through presence. Through time. The air grows warmer. The coolness of early morning fades quietly, replaced by a steady heat that settles over everything. It is not uncomfortable. It is expected. It has always been this way. Clothing is light. Loose. Simple. It allows the body to breathe, to move, to exist within the warmth without resistance. At the river, the fishermen have already begun their work. Their boats drift slightly away from the shore, guided by long poles or simple paddles. The water reflects the sky, bright and endless. Nets are cast with practiced ease. There is a soft splash. Then stillness. They wait. There is no impatience in this waiting. No sense that time is being lost. Waiting is part of the work. Just as important as movement. A man sits at the edge of his boat, watching the surface of the water. His eyes follow small ripples. Tiny movements that might signal the presence of fish below. He has seen these patterns many times before. He understands them without needing to explain them. This knowledge is quiet. It lives in the body, not in words. Back on land, artisans begin their own routines. A potter sits beside a simple wheel. It turns slowly under his hand. Clay rises between his fingers, shaped carefully into a form that is both familiar and necessary. A jar. A bowl. A vessel for water or grain. Each one looks much like the last. Each one serves a purpose that does not change. The clay is cool and smooth. It responds easily to pressure. Too much force, and it collapses. Too little, and it loses shape. Balance is everything. And balance comes from repetition. From doing the same motion, day after day, until it becomes natural. A weaver works nearby. Threads stretch across a simple loom. Her hands move carefully, guiding each strand into place. The pattern is not complex. It does not need to be. It is enough that it holds together. That it serves its purpose. Clothing here is not about change or expression. It is about function. About comfort. About continuity. The village itself remains quiet. There are voices, but they are low. There is movement, but it is gentle. No one rushes from place to place. There is no need. Everything that must be done will be done. In time. As the sun continues its slow path upward, the light becomes stronger. Shadows nearly disappear. The ground grows warmer underfoot. People begin to adjust their pace, not by stopping, but by moving in a way that matches the heat. More slowly. More deliberately. A short pause comes naturally. Not as a break from work, but as part of it. A moment to drink water. To sit in the shade of a wall. To let the body rest before continuing. These pauses are not separate from the day. They are woven into it. Just like everything else. Food is simple. Flat bread, still warm from the oven. Perhaps a small amount of vegetables. Sometimes fish. Sometimes dates. Nothing elaborate. Nothing unexpected. The same foods return again and again, just as the days do. And in that sameness, there is no disappointment. Only familiarity. The wind shifts slightly. It carries the scent of the river through the village. A soft, earthy smell. Damp and alive. It reminds everyone, without needing to be said, that the river is always there. Always moving. Always giving. And so the morning continues. Not building toward anything. Not rushing toward an end. But simply unfolding. In the same way it always has. In the same way it always will. The day moves forward, gently and without resistance, as the sun begins its slow journey toward the afternoon. And life, steady and unchanging, continues to repeat itself in quiet, comforting ways. The sun rises higher, almost without being noticed. There is no moment when morning clearly becomes midday. The change is slow, quiet, and steady, like everything else in this land. But the heat tells the story. It settles more firmly now, pressing gently against the earth, wrapping itself around the fields, the homes, the people who move within it. The air grows thicker. Not heavy in a harsh way, but full. Full of warmth. Full of light. Full of stillness. In the fields, movement continues, though it becomes softer, more measured. Farmers no longer bend as quickly. Their steps slow. Their hands pause a little longer between motions. This is not laziness. It is understanding. The body knows how to move with the sun, not against it. And so the work continues, but in a quieter rhythm. An ox stops for a moment, its sides rising and falling in slow, steady breaths. The farmer beside it does not rush. He waits. There is no need to push forward too quickly. The work will be finished, just as it always is. In its own time. The soil, once cool in the early morning, now feels warm to the touch. Dry on the surface, but still holding life beneath. The farmer presses his foot into it, feeling its softness, its quiet readiness. This land has behaved this way for as long as anyone remembers. And it will behave this way again tomorrow. Near the edge of the fields, a narrow path leads back toward the village. A few figures begin to follow it. Not leaving the work behind, but stepping away for a while. Midday brings with it a natural slowing. A gentle pause woven into the fabric of the day. Back in the village, shade becomes more important. Walls cast long, protective shadows. Doorways become places of rest. People gather where the sun cannot reach so strongly. They sit. They breathe. They wait. Inside one of the homes, the air feels cooler. The thick mud walls hold back the heat, creating a quiet, dim space. A woman sits on a woven mat, her hands resting in her lap for a moment. The work she has done since morning does not feel finished, but it is paused. And that is enough. A child lies nearby, half awake. The slow rhythm of the day has touched even the youngest. Eyes close and open. Breathing deepens. The world outside continues, but softly, as if wrapped in cloth. From outside, the faint sound of grinding stone still continues. Not everyone rests at the same time. There is always some movement. Some quiet action taking place. But even these sounds feel slower now. More spaced apart. As if time itself has stretched. At the river, the surface of the water shines under the full strength of the sun. Light reflects in shifting patterns, bright and almost endless. The fishermen remain in their boats, though their movements have grown still. Nets rest. Hands rest. Eyes watch. One man dips his hand into the water. He lifts it slowly, letting the droplets fall back in soft, quiet taps. The coolness lingers on his skin for a moment before fading into the warmth of the air. It is a small thing. A simple action. but it brings a brief sense of relief. There is no hurry to leave. No need to rush back to shore. The river moves as it always does. Fish pass beneath the surface as they always have. Everything continues, whether watched or not. In another part of the village, an older man sits alone in the shade. His work is lighter now. His body no longer moves as it once did. But he is still part of the rhythm. Still part of the day. He watches quietly, observing the patterns he has seen for many years. Nothing surprises him. Nothing feels new. And in that familiarity, there is a kind of calm. The hours of midday pass slowly. Not marked by clocks or bells, but by feeling. By the position of the sun. By the length of shadows. By the quiet signals of the body. Hunger. Warmth. Fatigue. Food is shared again, though lightly. A piece of bread. A handful of dates. Water drawn from a clay jar, cool to the touch. The taste is simple. Unchanging. But it is enough. It has always been enough. Conversations are soft. Few words are needed. There is little to explain, little to question. Each person already understands the shape of the day. Already knows what will come next. A breeze moves through the village. It is faint, but noticeable. It carries with it the scent of dry earth and distant water. For a moment, it lifts the edge of a cloth, stirs the dust along the ground, brushes gently against skin. Then it passes, leaving the stillness behind once more. The sun begins, almost imperceptibly, to move downward. Its light shifts. Not dimmer, but softer. The harshness of midday begins to ease. Though the heat remains, its intensity slowly loosens its hold. In the fields, the farmers return fully to their work. If they had stepped away, they now come back. If they had slowed, they begin to move a little more steadily again. The second half of the day begins, though it feels much like the first. The same motions repeat. The same paths are walked. The same tools are lifted and set down. There is no clear division between one part of the day and another. Only a continuous flow. A gentle unfolding that never truly stops. A young boy now carries a small bundle. It is light, easy for him to manage. He walks carefully, following the same path he has seen others take. Step by step. Learning not through instruction, but through doing. Through repetition. Through quiet observation. The land remains unchanged. The river continues its slow movement. The sky stretches wide and empty above. Nothing interrupts this steady pattern. Nothing demands that it be different. And so midday passes. Not as a peak. Not as a turning point. But as another layer in the day. Another part of the same gentle cycle. There is comfort in knowing what comes next. Comfort in the absence of surprise. In the quiet certainty that tomorrow will follow this same path. And the day after that. And the day after that. The sun continues its slow descent. And with it, the world begins, almost without notice, to soften once more. The afternoon approaches quietly, carrying with it the same steady rhythm, the same familiar patterns, and the same calm repetition that shapes every part of life along the Nile. The change from midday to afternoon happens quietly. There is no clear moment when one becomes the other. Only a soft easing. A slow release. The sun, which once stood high and still, now begins its gradual descent. Its light shifts just enough to be felt, though not immediately noticed. The heat lingers, but it no longer presses quite as firmly. The air begins to move again, just slightly. And life, which had softened under the weight of midday, begins to stir a little more. In the fields, the farmers continue their work. Their movements grow steadier now, less slowed by the sun's intensity. The rhythm returns, not as something new, but as something remembered. Bend. Lift. Step. turn. The same motions, repeated with quiet patience. The soil breaks gently beneath their tools. Lines form again across the earth, straight and familiar. Nothing unexpected appears. Nothing interrupts the flow. An ox resumes its steady path, guided by soft sounds and small gestures. Its hooves press into the ground with a quiet, consistent weight. Dust rises lightly, then settles again. Even this small motion feels part of something larger, something unchanging. A farmer wipes his brow with the back of his hand. There is no frustration in the gesture. Only habit. Only the simple response to warmth and effort. He looks out across the field again, just as he did in the morning. And what he sees is nearly the same. The same land. The same work. The same quiet order. Near the river, the fishermen begin to gather their nets. The waiting has passed, and now comes the slow, careful work of pulling them in. Hand over hand. Steady. Measured. The nets rise from the water, heavy with what they have gathered. Fish glisten in the light, their movement small and contained. There is no excitement. No sudden rush. Only the quiet understanding that the river has given what it always gives. Enough. A boat drifts closer to the shore. The wood creaks softly as it moves through the water. The man inside guides it without effort, his hands familiar with every motion required. He has done this many times before. And he will do it again. On land, the village begins to feel more active once more. Not busy. Not loud. But gently awake. People step out from the deeper shade. They return to small tasks left unfinished. They move between spaces they know well, following paths worn into the ground over many years. A woman carries a clay jar to the river. Her steps are careful, balanced. The jar rests against her side, supported by one arm. She does not hurry. There is no need. The river will be there when she arrives. Just as it always is. At the water's edge, she kneels. She dips the jar slowly, allowing it to fill without splashing. The surface of the river ripples outward in soft circles. Then stillness returns. She lifts the jar again, now heavier, and begins the quiet walk back. Children gather nearby, their voices low but present. They play in simple ways. Running short distances. Tracing shapes in the dust. Watching the movement of insects along the ground. Their world is small. But it is full. Full of the same sights and sounds, repeated day after day. There is no urgency in their play. No need for newness. They return to the same games, the same spaces, the same gentle patterns. And in doing so, they learn the rhythm of life that surrounds them. In the shade of a wall, an older woman weaves. Her hands move with a quiet confidence. Thread passes through thread. The pattern builds slowly, almost unnoticed. She does not look up often. She does not need to. Her work exists in repetition, in memory, in the steady passage of time. A soft breeze returns. It moves through the village, touching surfaces lightly. Cloth shifts. Leaves stir. The air feels a little easier to breathe. It is a small change, but it is felt by everyone. Even if no one speaks of it. The smell of baking bread rises again. It drifts through the air, warm and simple. It is a scent that returns each day. A quiet signal that time is moving forward. That evening will come, just as it always does. In the distance, the fields begin to glow slightly under the changing light. The green of the crops softens. The shadows lengthen, stretching slowly across the ground. The world begins to feel wider again, less compressed by the weight of midday. A farmer pauses once more. Not because the work is finished, but because the day itself is shifting. He leans lightly on his tool, looking out over what has been done. There is no need to measure progress in exact terms. The work continues, whether counted or not. The same thoughts pass through his mind as they have before. Simple thoughts. Quiet thoughts. The kind that do not disturb the stillness of the day. There is comfort in knowing what tomorrow will ask. Comfort in knowing that he already understands the answer. Back in the village, preparations for the evening begin in small, unspoken ways. More water is gathered. Food is arranged. Spaces are cleared. Nothing dramatic. Nothing sudden. Just the gradual shift from one part of the day into another. The sun lowers further. Its light becomes softer, warmer. It spreads across the land in a gentle glow, touching everything with the same calm presence. Walls. Fields. Water. Skin. Everything feels quieter now. Even the sounds seem to soften. Voices lower. Movements slow. The world begins, once again, to settle. And still, nothing truly changes. The same patterns remain. The same routines continue. The same quiet repetition holds everything in place. The afternoon does not end. It simply becomes something else. Something softer. Something closer to rest. The river flows on. Unhurried. Unbroken. Just as it always has. The light begins to soften in a way that feels almost like a quiet exhale. The sun lowers slowly, no longer pressing down, but resting gently against the horizon. Its warmth lingers, though it has changed in character. It is no longer something to endure. It is something to settle into. The land responds without effort. Colors deepen. Shadows stretch long and thin across the ground. And the steady rhythm of the day begins to ease toward rest. In the fields, the farmers take slower steps now. Not stopping all at once, not leaving suddenly, but gradually bringing their work to a close. There is no signal that tells them the day is done. No voice calling them away. Only the quiet understanding, shared by all, that the time has come. A tool is lifted one last time. The soil is turned once more. Then the movement pauses. The body straightens. A breath is taken. And the work, for now, is enough. Oxen are guided gently away from the fields. Their pace is unhurried, steady, familiar. They know the path as well as the people who walk beside them. Step by step, they return toward the village, leaving behind the lines they have helped carve into the earth. Dust rises lightly beneath their hooves, glowing softly in the low light. It drifts, then settles again. Just as everything else does. A farmer walks beside his animal, one hand resting lightly against its side. There is no need to speak. The silence between them is easy, shaped by repetition and time. They have made this walk many evenings before. And they will make it again. At the river's edge, the fishermen step back onto land. Their boats are pulled gently to shore. Nets are gathered, folded, set aside. The work has been done. Not perfectly. Not completely. But enough. It is always enough. Fish are carried in simple baskets. Some will be eaten soon. Some may be traded. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is hurried. Each step from river to village is taken slowly, as if the day itself is guiding the pace. The village begins to gather itself. Not in a single place, but in many small ways. People return to their homes. Paths fill quietly with movement. Feet press into the same ground, following the same routes carved over time. A woman places her jar of water inside her home. She sets it down carefully, in the place where it always rests. Her hands linger on it for a moment, feeling its cool surface. Then she turns, already thinking of the next small task. Children drift back toward their families. Their play softens, then fades. Their voices grow quieter. Not silenced, but lowered, as if the evening itself asks for stillness. The smell of food grows stronger now. Bread warms again. Fish cook slowly over small fires. The scent spreads through the air, gentle and familiar. It does not surprise anyone. It does not need to. It is part of the evening, just as the fading light is part of the sky. Inside the homes, movement is soft. Hands prepare simple meals. Mats are arranged. Clay lamps are made ready, though there is still light enough to see. Everything is done without urgency. Without noise. Without change. Outside, the sky begins to shift in color. The bright blue of the day fades into softer tones. Gold. Pale orange. A quiet wash of color that spreads slowly, almost without being noticed. A man sits near the doorway of his home. He does not speak. He does not move much. He simply watches. The fields in the distance. The path that leads to the river. The slow passing of others returning home. It is a moment that comes every day. And it always feels the same. There is comfort in the sameness. In knowing that nothing unexpected will arrive. That the evening will unfold just as it has before. That the night will come gently. Without interruption. A soft breeze moves again through the village. It carries the scent of earth, of water, of food, of warmth. It touches skin lightly, cooling it just enough to be felt. Then it passes, leaving behind a deeper stillness. Voices rise briefly, then fade. Short conversations. Simple words. Nothing urgent. Nothing that disturbs the quiet rhythm of the evening. Food is shared. Not in large gatherings, but within small groups. Families sit close together. They eat slowly. They speak little. There is no need for more. The day has already said everything it needed to say. A child leans against a parent, growing quiet. Eyes grow heavy. The long, steady rhythm of the day has gently worn away the energy of morning. There is no resistance to this. Only acceptance. The sun lowers further still. Its edge now close to the horizon. The light softens again, becoming dimmer, more distant. Shadows stretch and blend together. Details fade. Shapes become simpler. The world feels quieter now. Not empty. Not silent. But softened. As if everything has been wrapped in a thin layer of calm. The river reflects the fading light. Its surface no longer bright, but gently glowing. It continues to move, just as it always has. Unchanging. Unhurried. A final glance is cast across the fields. Nothing has changed. And yet, the day has passed. Just as all days do. There is no need to mark its ending. No need to hold on to it. Another day will come. And it will be much the same. The last light of the sun slips quietly below the horizon. And with it, the world prepares to rest. Night approaches slowly, carried on the same calm rhythm that has shaped every hour before it. And life, steady and familiar, begins to fade into the quiet stillness of evening. The last light fades gently. It does not disappear all at once. It lingers for a while, resting softly along the edge of the horizon, as if reluctant to leave. Then, slowly, it slips away. And the land grows dim. The sky deepens into a soft blue, then darker still. The first stars appear quietly, one by one, scattered across the wide openness above. There is no sound to mark their arrival. No change in the rhythm below. Only a quiet presence, steady and distant. In the village, the final movements of the day continue. Small, careful actions. A pot is moved. A mat is adjusted. A lamp is lit. The flame flickers gently, casting a warm, unsteady glow against the walls. Shadows move slowly, stretching and shrinking with each small motion. Inside the homes, the air feels cooler now. The heat of the day has begun to release its hold. The thick walls no longer keep warmth inside, but instead offer a kind of shelter from what remains. People sit or lie close to the ground. Their movements grow slower. Their voices softer. A woman finishes arranging the last of the evening meal. What remains is set aside. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is hurried. She washes her hands with a small amount of water, careful not to use more than needed. The gesture is simple. Familiar. Done the same way each night. A man stretches his legs out before him. The weight of the day rests in his body, but it is not heavy in an unpleasant way. It is expected. It belongs there. He leans back slightly, allowing himself a moment of stillness. Children lie down close to their families. Some fall asleep quickly. Others watch the dim light, their eyes following the small movements of shadow on the wall. Their breathing slows. Their thoughts drift. The rhythm of the day carries them gently toward rest. Outside, the village grows quieter. Not silent, but softened. Footsteps become less frequent. Voices fade into murmurs, then into nothing at all. The paths that were once lightly filled with movement now sit still beneath the darkening sky. At the edge of the village, the Nile continues its steady flow. It does not pause for night. It does not change its course. Its surface reflects the faint light of the stars, shifting gently as the water moves. There is a quiet sound, barely noticeable. A soft, continuous motion. Like breathing. A small boat, tied near the shore, rocks almost imperceptibly. The rope holds it in place. The water carries it just enough to remind it that it is part of something always moving. Further out, the land stretches into darkness. The desert beyond the fertile soil lies still and silent. No movement. No sound. Only open space beneath the sky. Back in the village, the last lamps are adjusted. Some are dimmed. Some are left to flicker a little longer. Eventually, they too will go out. There is no need to keep them burning. The night does not demand activity. It invites rest. A man steps outside his home for a moment. He looks upward. The stars are clearer now, filling the sky in quiet patterns. He does not name them. He does not study them. He simply sees them, as he has always seen them. They are part of the night. Just as the river is part of the land. Just as the land is part of his life. A soft breeze moves again. Cooler now. Gentler. It passes through the open spaces, across rooftops, along the ground. It touches everything lightly, then moves on. The sounds of insects begin to emerge. Small, steady, almost rhythmic. They fill the silence without breaking it. Adding to the calm, rather than disturbing it. One by one, the people of the village settle fully into rest. Bodies relax. Eyes close. Breathing deepens. The day, with all its quiet repetition, slowly releases its hold. There is no reflection on what has been done. No counting of hours. No measuring of effort. The day existed. It passed. That is enough. Tomorrow will come. It will look much the same. It will feel much the same. And that is not a burden. It is a kind of certainty. A steady path that does not shift or break. The river will rise and fall again. The fields will grow again. The work will return, just as it always does. And for now, there is only night. The village rests beneath the wide sky. The land lies quiet. The river moves on. Unseen, but never absent. Time passes gently here. Not in sharp moments, but in slow, continuous flow. Like water. Like breath. Like the steady rhythm of life itself. Nothing rushes. Nothing demands. Everything simply continues. And in this stillness, there is a quiet kind of peace. A calm that does not need to be spoken. A comfort that comes not from change, but from the absence of it. The night deepens. The stars remain. The air cools just a little more. And the world, unchanged and unhurried, rests. The hours of darkness stretch on, calm and uninterrupted, holding the same quiet rhythm that shapes every part of life along the Nile. And somewhere within that stillness, the next day waits, gently, patiently, ready to begin again in exactly the same way. The night continues without interruption. There is no sudden silence, because the silence has already settled. There is no clear moment of change, because everything has already softened into stillness. The village rests. The land rests. Even the air feels as though it has slowed. Hours pass in a quiet, unmeasured way. No one counts them. No one marks them. Time moves, but gently, without edges. The stars remain steady overhead. Their light does not flicker in any noticeable way. They simply exist, distant and constant, watching over a world that does not ask for change. The Nile flows on. Its movement is soft, almost hidden in the darkness. But it is always there. Always moving. Always continuing. At the edge of the village, a faint shift begins. Not in sound. Not in motion. But in light. The darkness begins to loosen, just slightly. Almost too gently to notice. The sky, once deep and full, starts to pale. Not bright. Not yet. Just a quiet lifting of the dark. A soft gray that spreads slowly along the horizon. The air feels cooler in this moment. Not cold, but lighter. Easier to breathe. It carries a sense of beginning, though nothing has yet begun. Inside the homes, people remain still. Their breathing slow. Their bodies at rest. The rhythm of sleep holds them gently. But even here, change begins. A small shift. A quiet stirring. The kind that happens without thought. Without awareness. A man opens his eyes. Not fully. Not all at once. Just enough to sense the difference in the air. The faint presence of morning. He does not rise immediately. There is no urgency. No reason to rush forward. The day will come whether he moves or not. Outside, the sky grows a little lighter. The stars begin to fade, not disappearing, but becoming less visible against the slow return of light. They retreat quietly, as they always do. A bird calls. Soft. Brief. A single sound that breaks the stillness without disturbing it. Then another. And another. Small voices, returning one by one. The village begins to wake. Not suddenly. Not all together. But gradually. Like the light itself. A woman shifts where she lies. She turns slightly, adjusting to the changing air. Her eyes open slowly. She remains still for a moment, listening. Feeling. There is no need to hurry. The first movements of the day are quiet. A hand brushing against a mat. A soft step against the floor. The faint sound of breath drawn a little deeper. Outside, the land becomes visible again. Shapes return. Edges form. The outlines of homes, of paths, of trees along the river begin to appear. Nothing new is revealed. Only what has always been there. The Nile reflects the early light. Not bright. Not clear. But present. Its surface shifts gently, holding the pale gray of the sky. A man steps outside. He pauses, just as he did the day before. He breathes in the cool air. He looks out across the land. And what he sees is exactly what he expects. The same fields. The same river. The same quiet space between them. There is no surprise in this. Only recognition. Only the calm knowledge that nothing has changed. Behind him, others begin to wake. Small movements ripple through the village. Doors open. Feet step onto the ground. Voices begin to rise, soft and low. A woman returns to the grinding stone. The grain is already waiting. It was prepared the day before. Her hands find their place without hesitation. Back and forth. Back and forth. The sound returns. The same sound that began the day before. The same sound that will begin the next. Children stir. They rise more slowly. Their movements unsteady at first, then familiar. They step into the light, just as they always do. Their world has not changed. Their day will not change. In the fields, the first figures appear again. Walking the same paths. Carrying the same tools. Their steps fall into rhythm without effort. The sun has not yet risen fully. But its presence is felt. A soft glow spreads along the horizon. The promise of warmth. The return of light. A farmer reaches the edge of his field. He pauses. Just for a moment. Looking out over the land. It is the same view he has seen countless times. And still, he looks. Not searching for something new. But simply seeing what is there. He begins his work. The first motion of the day. The same as yesterday. The same as the day before. The cycle continues. Without interruption. Without variation. The river will rise again. The fields will grow again. The work will repeat again. And so the day begins. Not as something new. But as something remembered. Something known. Something certain. There is comfort in this. A quiet kind of peace. A life where nothing asks to be different. Where each moment follows the last in a steady, unbroken line. The sun lifts slowly into the sky. The light spreads. The warmth returns. And once again, the world settles into its rhythm. The same rhythm. The same patterns. The same calm repetition. Day after day. Season after season. Year after year. Nothing rushes forward. Nothing falls behind. Everything moves together, in the same quiet flow. And in that flow, life continues. Softly. Steadily. Without change. The morning has returned, just as it always does. And with it, the same gentle rhythm begins again, carrying life forward in its calm and endless repetition. The days pass in a steady, unbroken line. Morning becomes midday. Midday becomes evening. Evening becomes night. And night returns again to morning. The pattern holds. Quietly. Reliably. But beyond the passing of a single day, there is another rhythm. A slower one. A deeper one. It moves not in hours, but in seasons. And even these seasons do not feel like sharp changes. They arrive gently. They leave gently. Almost unnoticed. In this land, the year is shaped by the river. Everything begins and ends with its movement. Its rise. Its fall. Its quiet return to the same path. There is a time when the Nile begins to swell. The water rises slowly at first. Then more fully. Spreading outward across the land. Covering the fields in a wide, shallow layer. This is not feared. It is expected. It is needed. The flood does not come suddenly. It does not rush in with force. It arrives with patience. The same patience that shapes everything here. Farmers step back from their fields during this time. There is little to do with the land while it rests beneath the water. But this is not a time of worry. It is part of the cycle. A necessary pause. The water brings with it dark soil. Rich. Soft. Full of life. When it settles, it leaves the soil behind. A quiet gift from the river. Given the same way, year after year. During these days, the pace of life changes slightly. But not in a dramatic way. Work shifts. It does not stop. Some repair tools. Some shape clay. Some tend to small tasks that fill the time. There is always something to do. Always something that repeats. Children walk closer to the water's edge, watching it slow spread across the land. They have seen it before. Even the youngest understand, in their own quiet way, that this is how things are meant to be. The village does not move. It does not change its place. It simply waits. Gently. Patiently. The water lingers. Then, slowly, it begins to recede. Not all at once. Not with any urgency. Just a gradual pulling back. Leaving the land behind once more. And when it does, the fields are ready again. Dark. Soft. Renewed. Farmers return. They step into the soil, feeling its texture beneath their feet. It is familiar. Even after the flood, nothing feels truly different. Only refreshed. Only continued. Seeds are planted. By hand. Carefully. Simply. There is no rush to see them grow. Growth takes time. Time moves slowly here. And no one expects it to move faster. The sun continues its steady path. The days grow warm again. The fields begin to show small signs of life. Green shoots pushing gently through the soil. The same tasks return. The same routines. The same quiet patterns. Water is carried. Tools are lifted. Hands move in ways they already know. There is no excitement in the growth. Only acceptance. Only the calm knowledge that this is what always happens. The plants rise slowly. They do not hurry. They do not change direction. They follow the same path as every season before. And when the time comes, they are harvested. Carefully. Steadily. Without rush. Grain is gathered. Bundles are formed. The work continues, just as it always does. This cycle does not surprise anyone. It does not bring uncertainty. It does not demand adaptation. It simply repeats. Again and again. The flood. The planting. The growth. The harvest. Each part flows into the next. Seamlessly. Quietly. And then, once more, the river begins to rise. There is comfort in this pattern. A deep, steady comfort. There is no need to wonder what the future will bring. Because the future looks like the past. And the past has always been enough. Even the weather does not change in sudden ways. The sun remains. The sky stays wide and open. Clouds pass, but they do not linger. Rain is rare. Unexpected. But not necessary. The land does not rely on the sky. It relies on the river. And the river never forgets its role. The air grows warm. Then cooler. Then warm again. But never in extremes. Never in ways that disturb the steady rhythm of life. Clothing remains the same. Homes remain the same. Tools remain the same. Generations pass. But daily life does not shift in any noticeable way. A child becomes an adult. An adult grows older. And yet, the pattern remains unchanged. A young boy who once followed his father now walks beside his own child. Showing the same motions. The same paths. The same quiet understanding of how life is lived. Nothing is reinvented. Nothing is replaced. Everything continues. And so the seasons pass. Not as markers of change. But as gentle turns in an unbroken circle. The river rises. The river falls. The land responds. The people follow. And in this repetition, there is a kind of stillness. A life that does not demand constant adjustment. A life that does not move forward in sudden leaps. Only a life that continues. Softly. Steadily. Endlessly. The same sun rises. The same river flows. The same hands work the same soil. and the world remains as it has always been. The seasons turn quietly, barely disturbing the calm rhythm of life, as everything continues in the same gentle, repeating cycle along the Nile. Time continues to pass. Not in sharp moments. Not in ways that feel new or different. But in the same slow movement that shapes each day and each season. A child grows. Almost without noticing. One day they walk beside their parents. Watching. Listening. Learning without being taught. Then, slowly, they begin to take part. Their hands lift small tools. Their steps follow familiar paths. Their movements begin to match the rhythm of those around them. Nothing is explained in long words. Nothing is written down. Life is learned through repetition. Through presence. Through doing the same things again and again. A boy who once carried nothing now carries small bundles. Then larger ones. His hands grow stronger. His steps more certain. A girl who once watched quietly now grinds grain. Her hands finding the motion naturally. Back and forth. Back and forth. The same sound. The same rhythm. There is no moment when childhood clearly ends. No single day that marks the change. It happens gradually. So slowly that it feels like nothing has changed at all. And yet, everything continues forward. Parents grow older. Not suddenly. Not in ways that disrupt the pattern. But gently. Like the fading of light at the end of the day. Their movements become slower. Their work becomes lighter. They sit more often. They watch more. But they are never separate from the rhythm. They remain part of it. In quiet ways. In still ways. An older man sits near the edge of the village. The same place he has sat many times before. He watches the path. He watches the fields. He watches the river in the distance. He has seen all of this for many years. And it has never truly changed. There is comfort in that. A deep and steady comfort. A younger man now works in the fields where his father once stood. His hands move in the same way. His steps follow the same lines. He does not think of it as repetition. It is simply life. The tools are the same. The land is the same. The river is the same. And so the work is the same. Families remain close. Not only in space, but in pattern. Each person's day fits into the next. Each task connects to another. There is no separation between roles. Only a shared understanding of what must be done. A woman prepares food as her mother did. As her mother's mother did. The same ingredients. The same methods. The same quiet care. A man repairs a tool in the same way his father once showed him. Though no formal lesson was given. Only observation. Only repetition. Children watch. As they once watched. And slowly, they begin to do. Nothing changes quickly. Nothing is replaced. There is no need. What works continues. What has always worked remains. The houses stand where they have always stood. Repaired when needed. But never moved. Never redesigned. The paths through the village grow more familiar with each passing year. Worn gently into the earth by countless footsteps. All following the same routes. Even the sounds remain the same. Grinding stone. Soft voices. The distant movement of water. These sounds do not fade. They do not change. They simply continue. Time does not feel like something moving forward. It feels like something circling. Returning again and again to the same place. A day feels like the one before. A year feels like the one before. A lifetime feels like many lifetimes before it. And in this, there is no confusion. No uncertainty. Life is known. Completely. Quietly. There is no need to wonder what tomorrow will bring. Because tomorrow will follow the same path. A child born today will grow into the same rhythm, will wake to the same light, will walk the same paths, will do the same work, not because they must, but because nothing else calls them away. The world does not change around them, and so they do not need to change within it. This repetition is not seen as limitation. It is not questioned. It simply is. A steady pattern. A quiet cycle. A life that continues without interruption. And as one generation slowly fades, another takes its place. Without ceremony. Without clear division. The work continues. The river flows. The sun rises. And everything remains as it has always been. There is a calm in this. A kind of stillness that stretches across years. Across lifetimes. Nothing rushes forward. Nothing falls behind. Everything moves together. In the same quiet rhythm. And so life continues. Softly. Steadily. Endlessly repeating. The passing of generations does not break the rhythm, but gently carries it forward, as each life settles into the same calm and familiar pattern along the Nile. Far from the small villages along the river, there are places where stone rises from the earth. Massive structures. Carefully shaped. Placed with a patience that seems almost endless. These are not places of constant activity. Even here, in the presence of great building and careful work, the rhythm remains slow. Measured. Steady. Workers move across wide open spaces beneath the sun. Their bodies carry stone. Their hands guide ropes. Their feet follow paths already worn into the ground. There is effort here. Yes. But it is not rushed effort. It is not chaotic. It is controlled. Repetitive. Almost rhythmic in itself. Stone is lifted. Then set down. Then adjusted. Then lifted again. The same motions repeat across hours. Across days. Across years. Nothing is hurried into place. Everything is aligned slowly. Carefully. With time as a constant companion rather than an obstacle. The structures grow, not in sudden leaps, but in gradual layers. One stone placed upon another. One block resting beside the next. Each piece is simple on its own. But together they form something lasting. Something that outlives the hands that shape it. And yet, even here, the feeling is not one of urgency or excitement. It is still rooted in repetition. Still grounded in the same quiet rhythm that shapes life along the river. Workers rest when the sun grows too strong. They return when the light softens. They move with the day, not against it. Water is brought in clay jars. Bread is shared in small portions. Conversation remains brief. Soft. Unhurried. Even the sound of construction does not feel harsh. It blends into the air. Stone against stone. Rope against wood. Footsteps against dust. All of it forms a steady background, like a distant heartbeat. Nearby, scribes sit in shaded spaces. Their hands move carefully across surfaces prepared for writing. Symbols are repeated, recorded, copied. But even this act of recording is not rushed. It follows the same patience as everything else. Line by line. Mark by mark. They preserve what is already known. What has already been lived. What will continue to be lived. And so even knowledge itself becomes part of the repetition. Not something that changes quickly, but something that is carried forward slowly. Back in the smaller villages, life continues unchanged. The same routines. The same movements. The same quiet certainty. The river still rises. Still falls. Still returns. The fields are still planted. Still harvested. Still renewed. Children still grow into adults. Adults still grow into elders. Elders still watch the rhythm continue. Everything remains connected. Everything remains familiar. Even distance does not create difference. Whether near stone or soil, whether in village or open land, the pattern holds. There is work. There is rest. There is repetition. And through all of it, nothing demands transformation. Nothing forces change. A man carrying stone pauses for a moment. He looks out across the open land. The same land seen by countless others before him. The same sky. The same sun. The same quiet air. He does not think of the scale of what is being built. He does not imagine the future. He simply returns to the next motion. The next lift. The next placement. And so it continues. The structure grows. Slowly. Quietly. Without drama. Just as the river shapes the land over time, so too does time shape the work of human hands. Not in bursts, but in steady accumulation. One day blends into the next. One task blends into the next. One generation blends into the next. There is no sharp line between beginning and end. Only continuation. Even the stone, though it appears unchanging, is part of the same rhythm. Placed. Waited upon. Adjusted. Everything moves in the same gentle current of repetition. And in this vast stillness, whether in field or structure, whether in village or open worksite, the same truth remains. Life does not rush. It does not break itself into sudden changes. It flows. Slowly. Continuously. Like the river. Like the day. Like the breath of the land itself. The world of ancient Egypt, whether in small villages or great stone cities, continues to move in the same calm and repetitive rhythm, where nothing truly ends and nothing truly begins, only the steady unfolding of life along the Nile. As time continues its slow and steady movement, something becomes quietly clear in the life along the Nile. Nothing is meant to be different. Not really. Not in any urgent or visible way. The river does not change its path. It does not search for another direction. It follows the same wide, familiar course through the land, as it has always done. The fields do not surprise the people who tend them. They grow when they are meant to grow. They rest when they are meant to rest. They respond in ways already known. Even the sky, vast and open above everything, follows a gentle predictability. The sun rises. The sun falls. The stars return. And nothing interrupts their cycle. In this kind of world, change is not something people expect. It is not something they build their lives around. It arrives slowly, if it arrives at all. And when it does, it is often absorbed into the same familiar rhythm. A new tool may appear, but it is used in the same way. A new generation may take over work, but they follow the same patterns. A new building may rise, but it is shaped by the same hands, the same methods, the same understanding of how things should be. Everything adjusts, but nothing transforms. Everything continues, but nothing breaks the flow. And so life becomes deeply familiar. Not just day by day, but year by year, generation by generation. A person can walk through their entire life without ever feeling that the world has shifted beneath them. The land is the same. The river is the same. The work is the same. The expectations are the same. There is a comfort in this that is difficult to name. Not excitement. Not joy in the modern sense. But something quieter. Something steady. The comfort of knowing what comes next. Even without thinking about it. Even without needing to plan for it. A farmer wakes and already understands the shape of his day. A builder begins work and already knows the motion of his hands. A child grows and already sees the path ahead of them. Not because it is spoken aloud, but because it is everywhere. In the soil. In the water. In the rhythm of life itself. Even rest follows a pattern. Sleep comes after work. Work comes after rest. And neither interrupts the other. Night does not feel like an ending. It feels like part of the cycle. A pause that is expected. A quiet space between repetitions. And morning does not feel like a beginning. It feels like a return. To something already known. Already lived. There is a softness in this repetition. A lack of sharp edges. No sudden turns. No breaking points. Even hardship, when it comes, does not feel like disruption in the way it might elsewhere. It is absorbed. Handled. Folded into the same steady rhythm. The river may rise higher one year. The fields may yield less in another. But the pattern itself does not break. It adjusts gently. Then continues. People learn not to resist the rhythm, but to move with it. To match their steps to its pace. To accept its quiet continuity. And so life becomes something like breathing. Not something that is constantly noticed. But something that simply happens. Over and over. Without effort. Without question. A hand lifts. A tool is used. A seed is placed. A jar is filled. A path is walked. A day passes. And then another. And then another. Nothing demands attention. Because everything is already understood. Even thought itself becomes slower here. Less urgent. Less fractured. It follows the same steady flow as everything else. There is time to sit. To observe. To do nothing without discomfort. Because nothing is missing. Nothing is chasing attention. The land does not ask to be interpreted. It simply exists. And in its existence, it guides life forward in the same calm direction. And so the people live within it. Not as something separate from the rhythm. But as part of it. The river flows. The fields respond. The sun completes its path. The night returns. And everything continues. There is no final destination. No point at which the pattern ends. Only continuation. Only repetition. Only the steady unfolding of a life that does not seek to become something else. And in this endless familiarity, there is a quiet stillness that stretches far beyond any single day. A stillness that feels like it belongs not just to time, but to existence itself. Nothing changes quickly. And perhaps nothing is meant to. The world remains as it is. And it continues to remain. Gently. Steadily. Without interruption. And so life along the Nile carries on in its unbroken rhythm, where even the idea of change becomes soft, distant, and almost unnecessary, as everything continues exactly as it has always been. As the rhythm of life continues, there comes a quiet sense that nothing new is waiting ahead. Not in a heavy or troubling way. But in a simple, calm acceptance. The river does not reveal hidden turns. The land does not conceal sudden surprises. The sky does not shift its nature. Everything remains as it has always been. And over time, people learn not to look for something different. They learn to see what is already there. To notice what repeats. To trust what continues. A day is not measured by its uniqueness. It is measured by its familiarity. By how closely it resembles the days before it. Morning light over the fields. Afternoon warmth over the river. Evening stillness across the village. Night settling gently over all things. These are not events. They are rhythms. They are patterns that return without effort. Even memory becomes gentle here. It does not rush backward. It does not chase forward. It simply rests within the flow of what is already known. A person remembers a childhood path. It is the same path they still walk. A person remembers a hand motion. It is the same motion they still perform. A person remembers a season. It is the same season that returns again. There is little distance between past and present. They sit close together. Almost overlapping. almost the same. This closeness creates a quiet ease. Nothing feels lost. Nothing feels far away. Even time itself feels less like something moving forward and more like something circling softly in place. Returning. Repeating. Continuing. The river flows, but it also returns. The sun rises, but it also returns. The work is done, but it also returns. Everything is part of a larger repetition that never breaks. Only shifts slightly in tone. In light. In temperature. In feeling. And so life becomes less about arrival. And more about presence. Being within the pattern. Moving with it. Not against it. There is no need to hold tightly to moments. They do not disappear suddenly. They fade slowly, like the changing light at the end of the day. A conversation ends. But it is similar to the one before it. A meal is eaten. But it is similar to the one before it. A season passes. But it is similar to the one before it. Nothing demands attention as new. Everything belongs to what has already been lived. Even endings are gentle here. They do not feel like conclusions. They feel like transitions. Soft shifts into something already familiar. Night does not close the day. It continues it. Morning does not begin the day. It resumes it. And in this understanding, life becomes simple in a way that is difficult to explain. Not simple as in lacking depth, but simple as in lacking interruption. Everything fits. Everything belongs. Everything continues. A hand that once learned a motion still performs it. A path once walked is still walked. A life once begun is still unfolding in the same direction it always has. There is no urgency to define where it leads. Because it is always here. Always now. Always the same gentle unfolding. Even the idea of change becomes quiet. It does not disappear. But it no longer feels necessary to seek. What remains is the rhythm. The steady presence of life as it repeats itself without breaking. Without strain. Without resistance. The river flows. The fields respond. The sun returns. The people continue. And everything remains within the same soft circle of existence. Nothing asks to be different. And nothing needs to be. So the world settles into itself. Completely. Quietly. Without end. And in this final sense of continuity, life along the Nile simply continues not toward a conclusion, but within an endless, gentle repetition where every moment feels like it has always already been here, and will always remain the same. There is a point where the idea of before and after begins to soften. Not because time stops, but because time feels less divided, less separated into pieces. More like one continuous, gentle flow. A morning does not feel like something new arriving. It feels like something familiar returning. The same light. The same air. The same quiet shapes of land slowly appearing again as darkness fades. A person wakes, and there is no sense of stepping into a different world. It is the same world. Resting for a moment. Then continuing. The river is still there. It has always been there. It will always be there. Moving, but never leaving. Changing, but never changing. The fields open their quiet presence once more. Rows of land that have been walked before. Touched before. Worked before. And will be again. Even the smallest details feel repeated without effort. The sound of feet on packed earth. The soft shifting of cloth in the morning air. The distant movement of water along the river's edge. These are not remembered as separate events. They are felt as part of a continuous background. A steady layer beneath everything else. And so life does not feel like it is restarting each day. It feels like it is never fully stopping. Only pausing gently, then continuing. A hand reaches for a familiar tool. Not because it is chosen again, but because it was never really set aside in a final way. It simply rests, then returns. The same paths are taken without thought, not because they must be remembered, but because they are always there, waiting in the same place, shaped by the same footsteps. Even thought itself begins to move more quietly, less focused on distinction, more comfortable with repetition, more settled in what is already known. The village does not feel like a place that changes over time. It feels like a place that breathes, expanding slightly in the morning, settling slightly at night, returning always to its same quiet shape. Homes remain where they are, not as fixed monuments, but as part of the land itself, as if they grew there slowly, like everything else. And within them, life continues in the same soft rhythm. Water carried, food prepared, tools placed down and lifted again. Silence between sounds, movement between rests. Even the river, though always flowing, feels like it belongs to stillness, because its motion never interrupts the calm. It exists alongside it, as part of it, not against it. There is no need to mark time with urgency, no need to divide it sharply, because nothing truly breaks, nothing truly ends. A day becomes another day, and that day becomes the next without resistance, like a breath that never fully leaves the body, only changes shape. Even the sky participates in this quiet repetition. Light returns, then fades, then returns again, without hesitation, without surprise. And in this slow, unbroken pattern, life feels less like a series of events, and more like a single, continuous presence. A presence that stretches beyond any one moment, beyond any one person, beyond any one lifetime. Generations pass through it, not as separate stories, but as parts of the same ongoing movement, the same steady rhythm, the same quiet flow. And so what begins is never truly new. It is only the continuation of something already in motion, already familiar, already known. Even the idea of beginning becomes soft here, less like a starting point, more like a return to light, a return to water, a return to soil, a return to the same gentle cycle that has always been present. Nothing needs to be reached, nothing needs to be completed, because everything is already within the flow. And so it continues, not forward in a sharp line, but forward in a circle that feels like stillness. A stillness that holds everything. A stillness that never breaks. A stillness that simply is. The river moves. The land rests. The sun returns. The people continue. And in this quiet continuity, there is no final moment. Only the soft unfolding of what has always been here. And so life along the Nile remains within its endless, gentle repetition, where every ending is only another beginning, and every beginning is already part of what has always been. As the rhythm continues without interruption, something subtle begins to settle in the background of it all. Not a change, not a shift, but a quiet awareness of how complete the repetition truly is. There is no outside to this way of life. No distant alternative pressing in. No need to imagine something different in order to measure what already exists. Everything is already contained within itself. The river, the land, the people, the work, the rest, the return. All of it moves together in a single, continuous motion. A hand rises. A task is done. A breath is taken. And then it is done again. Not because it is commanded, but because it is the shape of life itself. Even silence becomes familiar in this way. Not as absence, but as presence without interruption. A quiet that is always there, beneath sound, between sound, after sound. The village does not feel built upon time. It feels held by it, as if time is not something passing through it, but something that surrounds it gently, endlessly. The river continues its long movement. And yet it does not feel like it is going anywhere. It simply is. Always arriving. Always already present. The fields do not strive toward completion. They exist in cycles that never demand finality. Growth is followed by rest. Rest is followed by growth. And neither feels like an ending. Even the sun, rising and falling each day, does not suggest direction. Only rhythm. Only return. Only repetition that never becomes tiring. A person may walk the same path thousands of times. And each time, it feels less like repetition. And more like recognition. The path is not new. But neither is it old. It simply is. Waiting in the same place. Offering the same quiet familiarity. And so experience itself begins to soften. It no longer divides into moments of novelty and memory. It becomes a continuous field of familiarity. A field where nothing truly stands apart. Where everything is connected through repetition. Through return. Through steady continuation. Even thought begins to follow this rhythm. Less focused on distinction. More comfortable with continuity. Less concerned with change. More aware of presence. The world does not ask to be understood in new ways. It asks only to be lived within. Again. And again. And again. A day unfolds. And then it unfolds again. Not as a copy. But as the same living pattern repeating itself without strain. Morning light returns to the same fields. Afternoon heat returns to the same paths. Evening quiet returns to the same homes. Night returns to the same stillness. Nothing is added to it. Nothing is removed from it. It remains whole in its repetition. Complete in its sameness. Even memory begins to feel less like something reaching backward. And more like something resting within the present. Because what is remembered is still here. Still happening. Still repeating. And so the boundary between what was and what is begins to blur. Softly. Without effort. Without notice. Life does not move away from itself. It stays close. Close to its own patterns. Close to its own rhythm. Close to its own quiet continuity. And in this closeness, there is a kind of understanding that does not need to be spoken. That nothing here is separate. Nothing here is isolated. Everything belongs to the same gentle motion. The river belongs to the land. The land belongs to the people. The people belong to the rhythm. And the rhythm belongs to nothing outside itself. It simply continues. Without beginning. Without final end. And so even the idea of progression feels distant. Because nothing is being reached. Only repeated. Only lived. Only returned to. A hand moves through water. A foot presses into soil. A voice fades into silence. And then it all begins again. Not as a cycle to escape. But as a cycle that holds everything in place. Softly. Steadily. Without disruption. Without break. And in this endless familiarity, life remains exactly what it has always been. Not changing. Not arriving. Not leaving. Only continuing. And so the quiet rhythm deepens further still, where even understanding itself becomes part of the repetition, and everything simply exists within the same calm, unbroken flow along the Nile. As the long rhythm of life continues, something subtle begins to happen to the idea of difference itself. Not in any sudden way. Not in any way that can be clearly seen. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, distinctions begin to soften. Morning and evening begin to feel less separate. Work and rest begin to feel less divided. One day begins to resemble the next so closely that the edges between them grow faint. It is not that they become the same moment. It is that they begin to feel like variations of a single, continuous presence. The river does not change its identity from hour to hour. It remains what it is, even as it moves. Even as it shifts. Even as it flows. And the people, living beside it, begin to reflect that same continuity. Their lives do not break into isolated pieces. They flow. Quietly. Steadily. Without interruption. A task begins and ends, but the ending does not feel like separation. Only a pause. A breath. A gentle resting point before continuation. A field is worked, then left to rest, then worked again. But it is always the same field. Always the same land. Always part of the same ongoing rhythm. Even change, when it appears, does not feel like disruption. It feels like adjustment within continuity. Like water shifting its surface without altering its course. A child grows taller. But remains within the same village. Within the same patterns. Within the same slow rhythm of life. An elder grows quieter. But remains within the same presence. Watching the same cycles return. As they always have. Nothing leaves the rhythm. Nothing stands outside it. Everything participates in it. Even thought becomes less focused on separation. Less aware of before and after. More aware of still continuing. A memory is not something far away. It is something that still echoes within the present. Because what was once lived is still being lived, in a different form, through repetition. A gesture learned long ago is still performed today. A path walked long ago is still walked today. A sound heard long ago is still heard today. Not as repetition that grows dull, but as repetition that grows familiar. And in familiarity, there is a kind of quiet ease. The world does not demand novelty. It does not require constant change to feel complete. It remains whole in its return. The river returns to its course each day. The sun returns to its arc. The fields return to their cycles. The people return to their tasks. And all of it feels less like repetition in the usual sense. And more like a single motion seen from different angles. Even distance begins to lose its sharpness. What is far and what is near both belong to the same slow landscape. The same riverbank. The same fields. The same sky. The same movement of life unfolding without interruption. And so the sense of difference itself begins to fade into something gentler. Something quieter. Something less defined. Not everything becomes identical. But everything becomes connected. Held within the same continuity. A hand moves. And it is the same kind of movement as before. A breath is taken. And it is the same kind of breath as before. A day unfolds. And it is the same kind of unfolding as before. Nothing stands apart long enough to become entirely separate. Everything returns too quickly to the shared rhythm. And in this way, life begins to feel less like a collection of moments. And more like a single, extended presence. A presence that does not need to be divided. That does not need to be measured in contrasts. That does not require difference in order to be understood. It simply continues. Softly. Evenly. Without sharp edges. Without breaks. And so what once seemed like separate parts of life, morning, work, rest, night, begin to feel like one continuous movement of the same gentle pattern. Always returning. Always repeating. Always remaining within itself. The river flows without changing its nature. The land rests within its cycles. The people live within its rhythm. And nothing steps outside of it. Everything belongs. Everything continues. Everything remains. And in this quiet dissolving of difference, what is left is not emptiness, but continuity itself. And so life along the Nile settles even deeper into its unbroken rhythm, where all distinctions grow soft and everything becomes part of the same calm, endless unfolding that never truly begins and never truly ends. As the rhythm continues, time itself begins to feel less like something moving forward, and more like something settling deeper. Not changing direction, not speeding up or slowing down, but simply becoming more still in its own repetition. Days do not feel like steps anymore. They feel like layers, one resting gently upon another, each one similar in shape, each one familiar in weight. The morning light arrives in the same way it always has. Soft, gradual, unannounced. It touches the same ground, the same river, the same walls of homes that have stood for countless mornings before. And nothing in that moment feels new. Not because it has been forgotten, but because it has been seen so many times that novelty is no longer part of its meaning. A person opens their eyes, and the world is already there, waiting. Not in anticipation, but in continuation. The air carries the same quiet coolness it always does at this hour. The same faint scent of earth and water. The same distant movement of life slowly returning to itself. Even silence has a pattern. It stretches in the same way it always has. Between sounds. Between actions. Between breaths. And within that silence, nothing feels missing. Nothing feels incomplete. It is simply the space in which everything exists. Work begins again. Not as a new beginning, but as the resumption of something that never truly paused. Hands reach for familiar tools. Feet follow familiar paths. Bodies move in familiar rhythms. The fields open themselves again to the same quiet attention. The same gentle shaping of soil. The same slow coordination between human movement and land. Nothing resists the motion. Nothing interrupts it. Everything aligns as it always has. Even effort begins to feel less like exertion and more like participation. As if the body is not pushing against time, but moving with it. The river continues its steady presence nearby. Always shifting. Always the same. Never fully changing. Never fully still. Its sound is constant in the background of life. A soft, unspoken reminder that movement does not require urgency. That flow does not require direction to feel complete. And so the people, living beside it, begin to share in that same quality. A kind of quiet continuity that does not seek resolution. Only continuation. A task is completed. But completion does not feel like an ending. Only a soft release before the next repetition begins. A conversation ends. But nothing is concluded within it. It simply fades into silence and later returns again in another form. Even thought begins to settle into this rhythm. Less concerned with distinction. More comfortable with recurrence. More at ease with the familiar return of what has already been known. There is no need to search beyond what is present. Because what is present already contains everything that repeats. The same sky. The same land. The same river. The same motion of life unfolding without interruption. Even memory becomes less like retrieval and more like recognition. Not reaching backward, but noticing what is still here. Still ongoing. Still quietly repeating within the present moment. And so time does not feel fragmented. It does not feel divided into separate pieces. It feels continuous. Like breath that never fully separates between inhale and exhale. One flows into the other without interruption. And neither feels like a beginning or an end. Morning flows into work. Work flows into rest. Rest flows into night. Night flows back into morning. And the cycle does not feel like repetition in the ordinary sense. It feels like one uninterrupted movement seen from within itself. Nothing breaks it. Nothing steps outside of it. Everything remains within its gentle continuity. Even change, when it appears, does not disturb this sense of flow. It is absorbed. It becomes part of the same pattern, part of the same rhythm, part of the same unbroken presence. And so life continues not as a sequence of separate days, but as a single, ongoing unfolding. Soft, steady, endless. The river moves. The land responds. The people continue. And everything remains within the same quiet current that has always been there. Not beginning. Not ending. Only continuing. And so time deepens into itself along the Nile, where even the passage of days feels like one long, gentle breath that never truly stops, carrying everything forward in the same calm and unchanging rhythm. As the repetition continues without interruption, something subtle begins to settle into the feeling of life itself. Not heaviness. Not burden. But a kind of quiet weight made of familiarity. Of knowing. Of everything remaining as it has always been. The river still moves. But its movement no longer draws attention. It is simply there. A constant presence at the edge of every day. The fields still rise and fall with the seasons. But the seasons themselves no longer feel like changes. They feel like different expressions of the same long pattern. Morning is still morning. Evening is still evening. But neither feels separate enough to stand alone. They blend into one another softly. Like colors fading into the same cloth. A person wakes and already knows the shape of the day. Not through thought, but through repetition that has become instinct. There is no anticipation. No uncertainty. Only recognition. The body moves before the mind asks it to move. Hands reach for what they have always reached for. Feet step where they have always stepped. Even silence feels known. It is not empty. It is simply part of what has always been there. In this way, life does not demand attention. It does not call for decision in the way that feels sharp or urgent. It simply continues. And continuation becomes the only thing that needs to be understood. A farmer does not wonder what work will come. He already knows. Not because it is told to him each day, but because it never changes. The same soil. The same tools. The same motion repeated in the same quiet rhythm. A woman preparing food does not consider alternatives. Not because they do not exist, but because they are not part of the life she is living. Everything needed is already known. Already practiced. Already present in the hands and memory of the body. Even the idea of choice becomes soft here. Less like selection. More like continuation of what has always been done. And so the days unfold without hesitation. Without interruption. Without need for reinvention. The river does not ask to be different. The land does not ask to be different. The sky does not ask to be different. And the people, living within them, do not feel asked either. Everything aligns in the same steady direction. Not toward change, but toward repetition. Toward return. Toward continuity that never breaks. Even hardship, when it arrives, does not break this pattern. It is absorbed slowly. Handled quietly. Folded into the same rhythm as everything else. Because there is no separate space for disruption to stand apart. Everything is already part of the same ongoing flow. A broken tool is repaired. A tired body rests. A dry season passes. And then everything continues again. As it always has. Nothing is final. Nothing is absolute. Everything moves through the same gentle cycles. And in this continuity, there is a kind of stillness that does not depend on absence of motion. It exists within motion itself. The river flows. But it does not feel rushed. The land changes. But it does not feel disrupted. The people live. But they do not feel separated from the pattern they are part of. Everything belongs to the same quiet structure of repetition. Everything returns to it. Everything remains within it. Even time itself begins to feel less like a line stretching forward, and more like a wide, slow circle that never tightens, never ends, never closes. A circle that holds morning, midday, evening, and night in the same gentle space. A circle that holds birth, life, and age in the same quiet motion. A circle that holds river, land, and sky in the same continuous presence. And within that circle, nothing is lost. Nothing is left behind. Everything is always already included. A hand moves. A day passes. A breath returns. And nothing truly separates one moment from the next. They are all part of the same unfolding. The same rhythm. The same still, repeating life. And so what remains is not change. Not progression. Not arrival. Only the soft, steady continuation of what has always been here. And so life along the Nile settles even deeper into its unbroken familiarity, where nothing ever truly shifts away from itself, and everything continues within the same calm, repeating presence that quietly holds all things together. As the rhythm carries on, there comes a point where even the idea of later begins to feel distant. Not forgotten. Just softened. Less defined. The day does not feel like it is moving toward anything. It simply exists while it unfolds. And that unfolding feels like it has always been happening. The river continues its slow presence. Not as something watched with attention, but as something that is always there, whether noticed or not. It does not begin each day. It does not end each night. It simply continues through both. The fields remain in their quiet agreement with the land. They are never fully finished. Never fully empty. They are always in some stage of becoming or resting. And this in-between state begins to feel like the only state there is. Not beginning. Not ending. Only continuation. A person walking along a familiar path no longer thinks of arrival. There is no sense of destination that feels separate from the walking itself. The path is the experience. The movement is the meaning. Even the body begins to feel less like something that performs actions, and more like something that carries the rhythm forward. Hands do not decide what to do. They remember. Feet do not choose where to go. They return. Everything becomes guided by what has already been repeated countless times. Not as restriction, but as familiarity so complete it no longer feels like memory. The sky remains wide and unchanged in its presence. Clouds pass when they pass. Light shifts when it shifts. But nothing about it feels unfamiliar. It is always the same sky. Even when it looks slightly different. The village continues its quiet movement through time. But through feels like the wrong word. Because nothing feels like it is being passed. Only lived. Only repeated. Only gently sustained. A sound emerges. A tool striking wood. Water moving in a container. A voice speaking a short phrase. And then silence again. All of it part of the same quiet texture. There is no need for explanation within it. No need for interpretation. It is understood simply by existing within it. Even thought begins to settle into the stillness. It does not chase questions. It does not rush toward answers. It rests where it is. And in that resting, everything feels already complete. Not resolved, but continuous. A life here does not reach toward transformation. It moves within preservation. Within repetition that never breaks its own shape. The river does not become something else. The land does not become something else. The people do not become something else. They remain within the same unfolding pattern that has always been present. And even the passage of generations feels like a soft continuation rather than replacement. One life flows into another. Not as a break, but as an extension. The same gestures. The same movements. The same quiet understanding of how each day unfolds. Nothing needs to be relearned in a dramatic way. It is already known. Already present. Already continuing. And so time itself begins to feel less like something that moves forward, and more like something that simply expands in place. Wide. Gentle. Unbroken. A stillness that is not absence of life, but life without interruption. Without division. Without sharp edges. The river flows. The fields remain. The sky holds everything above it. And the people move within it like part of a single, continuous breath. There is no moment that stands apart as final. No point that feels like conclusion. Only the soft persistence of what has always been. And even that thought begins to fade. Because there is nothing outside it to compare it to. Only the same rhythm. The same return. The same quiet unfolding that never asks to become anything else. And so everything remains. Softly. Steadily. Without end. And in this deepest layer of repetition, life along the Nile becomes something like a still, endless presence where even time itself feels gently suspended within the same calm, unbroken continuity that never truly begins and never truly ends. As the repetition continues, something even quieter begins to settle beneath it all. A sense that nothing is missing. Not in any moment. Not in any day. Not in any life lived within this rhythm. There is no reaching outward for something else. Because everything already belongs to what is here. The river does not suggest another river. The land does not suggest another land. The sky does not suggest another sky. What exists is enough, not because it is limited, but because it is complete in its continuity. A morning arrives and does not ask to be compared. It is not measured against another morning. It is simply received as it is. Familiar. Steady. Returning. A day unfolds without needing contrast to give it meaning. It does not rely on novelty. It does not rely on surprise. It relies only on continuation. And so each moment feels quietly sufficient. Not because it stands alone, but because it is part of something that never breaks. A hand performs a motion. And that motion does not need to be new to matter. It matters because it belongs to the rhythm, to the pattern, to the ongoing flow of life itself. Even rest does not feel separate from work. It is part of the same cycle. A gentle slowing that leads naturally back into movement again. Nothing demands justification. Nothing asks to be different in order to be understood. The village exists as it has always existed. Not as something preserved against change, but as something that does not require change to feel whole. Paths are walked again. Tools are used again. Water is drawn again. Food is prepared again. And none of it feels like repetition that must be escaped. It feels like repetition that defines the shape of life itself. Even thought becomes quieter in this space. Less concerned with distinction. Less drawn to separation. More comfortable with continuity. A memory does not feel like something far away. It feels like something still present within the same ongoing flow. Because what was lived still echoes in what is being lived now. The river carries that same quality. It is never separate from itself. Never divided into versions. Only flowing. Always flowing. The fields mirror this presence. They are never fully finished. Never fully empty. Always part of a cycle that never closes. And so the people living within this rhythm begin to experience life not as a sequence of changes, but as a continuous unfolding that never steps outside itself. Even differences between days become soft. Not erased, but blended into familiarity. One day feels like another not because they are identical in detail, but because they share the same underlying rhythm. The same quiet structure. The same steady return. And in this, the idea of otherness begins to fade. there is less sense of contrast, less sense of separation, more sense of belonging to the same ongoing flow. A gesture is performed today as it was performed yesterday, and as it will be performed tomorrow, not as repetition to be noticed, but as life simply continuing its shape. Even change, when it appears, does not stand apart. It enters the rhythm and becomes part of it. It does not break continuity. It joins it. And so nothing ever truly leaves the pattern. Everything remains within it. Everything continues within it. Everything returns to it. The river flows without end. The land responds without resistance. The sky holds without change. The people live within the same gentle unfolding of time. And in this continuity, there is no need for something different to complete the experience of living. Because nothing here is incomplete. Everything is already part of the same quiet whole. The same soft presence. The same unbroken rhythm that does not ask to become anything else. And so life continues. Without contrast. Without separation. Without need for anything beyond what already is. Only the steady, repeating presence of a world that remains entirely itself. And in this quiet absence of need for difference, life along the Nile rests even more deeply into its unbroken rhythm, where everything belongs to the same continuous flow that never seeks change, and never requires it. As the long rhythm continues, something even more subtle begins to happen. Not a change in life, but a change in how life feels from within. Moments begin to sit closer together. Not in time, but in feeling. As if the space between them grows softer. Less defined. Less sharp. A morning does not feel far from the morning before it. An evening does not feel far from the evening before it. They rest near each other in memory and in experience, almost touching, almost overlapping. The sense of distance between then and now becomes quiet. Not erased. Just softened into continuity. A person performs a familiar task and does not feel it as separate from the same task done before. The hands remember. The body continues. And the mind follows gently behind. There is no moment that feels isolated. Each one leans into the next, like water flowing over smooth stone. No interruption. No break in shape. Even attention itself begins to settle. It does not jump between things with urgency. It rests longer. Stays longer. Moves more gently. The river remains the clearest reflection of this way of being. It does not move in segments. It moves as one long presence. Even when its surface shifts, it does not feel divided. And so life begins to resemble it more closely. Not by effort, but by living alongside it for so long. Work, rest, silence, movement, none of these feel separate enough to stand alone. They blend into one continuous field of experience. A hand lifts and lowers. And in that motion, there is the echo of all previous motions. Not as memory alone, but as presence repeating itself. A path is walked. And in that walking, it feels as though it has always been walked. Not once. Not many times. But continuously, as if walking itself is part of the land's nature. Even thought begins to lose its edges. It does not form into sharp distinctions as often. It flows more gently from one awareness to another. There is less need to mark beginnings. Less need to mark endings. Because everything feels like continuation. The fields do not feel like separate spaces from the village. The village does not feel separate from the river. The river does not feel separate from the land. Everything rests within everything else. Everything supports everything else. Everything continues through everything else. Even sound becomes part of this softened unity. The sound of water. The sound of wind. The sound of tools meeting earth. They do not interrupt silence. They exist within it. And silence itself is not empty. It is full of continuity. full of presence that does not demand attention. A person sits quietly and does not feel the need to separate that moment from the rest of the day. It is part of it. It belongs to it. It continues it. Even sleep does not feel like a break. It feels like another layer of the same ongoing rhythm. A softer layer. A quieter one. But still part of the same flow. And so life no longer feels like it is moving from one point to another. It feels like it is unfolding within a single, unbroken expanse. A continuous presence of river, land, sky, and people moving together without separation. Nothing stands apart long enough to feel isolated. Everything returns too quickly to the whole. And in this return, there is no loss of individuality. Only a soft blending into continuity. A life that does not need to be divided to be understood. A day that does not need to be marked to be lived. A world that does not need to change to remain complete. The river flows. The fields remain. The sky holds. The people continue. And all of it exists within the same quiet unfolding that never breaks its shape. And even now, nothing feels like an ending. Only continuation. Only presence. Only the soft closing of distance between moments that were never truly separate to begin with. And so life along the Nile settles even more gently into its unbroken continuity, where every moment flows into the next without division, and everything remains quietly part of the same endless, familiar rhythm. As time continues its slow and familiar movement, the world begins to feel as though it stretches outward without edge. Not in a vast, dramatic way, but in a quiet, steady way. Like a horizon that never changes no matter how long it is looked at. The river still flows. But its flow no longer feels directional. It feels present. Always present. As if it has never been anything other than this continuous movement. The land remains steady beneath it. Not resisting. Not changing its nature in visible ways. Just holding everything gently in place. And within this holding, life continues its soft unfolding. Not as a sequence of events, but as a constant return to what is already known. A hand rises in the morning. And it is the same kind of rising that has always happened. A foot steps forward. And it is the same kind of step that has always followed. A breath is taken. And it is the same breath that has always returned. Nothing feels new in a way that interrupts understanding. Everything feels familiar in a way that deepens it. Even the idea of first begins to fade. Because nothing feels like it has a first time anymore. Only ongoing presence. Only repeated being. Only continuous life. A field is not remembered as something that changes from year to year. It is experienced as something that is always becoming and always resting at the same time. The sky does not feel like it resets each day. It feels like it remains, only shifting its tone gently as time passes through it. Morning light is not a beginning. It is a return of the same light in a slightly different softness. Evening darkness is not an ending. It is the same quiet settling that has always followed light. And so the structure of life becomes less like a line and more like a presence. A presence that does not move away from itself. That does not divide itself into separate states. That simply continues being what it already is. Even memory becomes quieter still. It does not pull the mind backward. It sits within the present, like another layer of the same ongoing field. A person does not feel separated from what they once did. They feel continuous with it. As if all actions exist within the same gentle unfolding. The village remains unchanged in its essential shape. Not frozen. But gently preserved by repetition. Paths are still walked. Water is still drawn. Food is still prepared. Tools are still used. And all of it feels like one long, uninterrupted gesture. Even silence grows deeper in its familiarity. It is not absence. It is continuity without sound. A resting place within the ongoing flow. The river continues its movement beside everything else. But it no longer feels like something separate from life. It feels like the same rhythm expressed in water. And the people, living beside it, move in ways that reflect this same rhythm without needing to think about it. There is no effort to align with it. They already are aligned with it. Because nothing has ever been outside it. Even change, when it appears, does not break the pattern. It folds into it. Becomes part of it. Continues it. A season shifts. But it does not feel like departure. Only transformation within the same ongoing cycle. A life grows. A life fades. But neither feels like interruption. Only continuation through different forms. Everything remains within the same slow, steady presence. The same unbroken field of time that does not divide itself into parts. And so the world does not feel like it is progressing towards something else. It feels like it is resting within itself. Continuously. Softly. Without strain. A still horizon that never arrives closer or farther away. Only remains. Always remains. The river flows. The land holds. The sky stretches. The people continue. And all of it exists within the same gentle, unbroken rhythm that has no need to change in order to be complete. And so life along the Nile settles even deeper into its endless continuity, where even the idea of movement and stillness become one quiet presence, and everything remains softly within the same calm, repeating horizon that never ends. There comes a point where the story no longer moves forward in any clear way. Not because something has ended, but because everything has already been said in its own repeating form. Life along the Nile continues, as it always has. But there is no single moment that stands apart as a conclusion. No final turning point. No sharp ending waiting at the edge of time. The river still flows. Slow. Steady. Uninterrupted. As it has flowed for longer than any memory can hold. The fields still rise and rest with the seasons. The same soil. The same cycles. The same quiet return of growth after stillness. Villages remain where they have always been. Homes still hold their familiar shape. Paths still carry the weight of countless footsteps. And people continue to live within the same rhythm that has carried generations before them. Not as something chosen anew each day. But as something already in motion. Something continuous. Something shared. There is no final discovery waiting at the end of this life. No great change that resolves everything. No moment that transforms the pattern into something else. Because the pattern was never incomplete. It never needed resolution. It simply was. And still is. Morning still arrives softly. Evening still fades gently. Night still settles without effort. And dawn still returns without hesitation. The repetition that once seemed like structure becomes something closer to presence itself. Not cycles to escape. But cycles to exist within. Even memory no longer separates past from present in any strict way. What was lived remains part of what is lived. What continues has never truly left. And so the story does not end in a dramatic silence. It fades in the same way it lived. Quietly. Gradually. Without interruption. The river keeps moving. But nothing is carried away in urgency. Everything simply continues its slow return to itself. The land remains. The sky remains. The people remain within the rhythm that has always held them. And there is no final change that needs to be described beyond this. Because nothing here was ever moving toward an ending. Only continuing within itself. So the story dissolves gently here. Not into silence. But into the same ongoing presence it has always described. The repetition remains. The rhythm remains. The stillness remains. And life, as it has always been along the Nile, continues softly. Without beginning. Without ending. only unfolding within itself.